So, as I was saying, my number one lesson is luck favors the prepared mind. And the best way to prepare is to know the whole card, every section, every hand. I have met players who say, "Oh, I never play singles and pairs or concealed hands, or I'm afraid of the quints, or whatever it is." I don't want you to rule out any possible hand on the card. You really need to understand the whole card and how the hands interact so that, let's say you do have six jokers. I mean, it does happen occasionally. You might have the opportunity to play a quint hand, and how would that work with what you've got? You shouldn't rule anything out. And I don't recommend memorizing the hands per se. I just want you to be familiar with every section and comfortable with switching between sections so that you have every opportunity open to you. The more you know, it's that commercial, the more you know. The more you know, the better prepared you are, the more options you have, and therefore the more luck you have because you can turn tiles into a better hand for yourself. It's absolutely key to be as prepared as you can be. So, with that said, we're going to go further and discuss how to get more prepared. I have some shorthand that I like to use. I do it in my blogs. I often do it in my lectures too. There are 9 sections of the card. Sometimes it's addition hands or something instead of like numbers. But in general, and specifically this card, these 9 sections are what we're working with. We got a year, the evens, and the odds. We got like numbers, quints, the consecutive run section, wins, and 369, and then of course singles and pairs. And the reason I have it in red here is because we all know every singles and pairs hand is concealed. Okay, and then likewise, rather than say, "Oh, it's hand," it's this hand and list out the whole name of it. I give abbreviations for the number it is on the number on the list. So, like the third hand in the even section would be E3, or the fifth hand in singles and pairs would be SP5. So I hope that makes sense to you. There's also an upper and lower end of the number line, sometimes like the 1 through 5 versus 5 through 9. So I call those A versus B. And then depending on the number of suits represented, there might be a single suited version and then a 3 suited version or a 2 suited version. So it would be like version 2.2 versus version 2.3. It's pretty straightforward. It seems weird when you first see it, but then you think, "Oh yeah, 2.3, that's the three suited version of that hand." Okay, so again, these slides will be available to you later on. You can always go through it again at your own speed. Going to the next one. There. Okay, some other useful terms, especially for you newbies. I'm really happy that we have some new players here, but there's a lot to learn. So I'm going to be using some terms that you might not be familiar with. A single and a pair. Single is one of a kind, pair is two of a kind. You may not use jokers with either of those. You can only use jokers to be the same identical tile as the rest of the group for a group of 3 or more. So in Mahjong, we call a 3 of a kind, 3 of the same tile, a pung. And you can use jokers in it. 4 of a kind is called a kong. 5 of a kind is a quint, and it usually needs at least 1 joker. The only time you wouldn't need a joker would be a quint of flowers. This year we don't have a quint of flowers, but the quints that we have, we must use a joker for anything other than flowers in order to get 5 of a kind. Now, sextet is something that you see some of these are highlighted in blue. The blues are because they're for this card. Blue is new. Sextet is 6 of a kind, and I mean very specifically 6, not 3 and 3. 6 total all at once. And you can use, and this year there is a sextet of flowers. They must be 6, but they could be as many jokers as you need or flowers as long as they total 6. So I've seen people put out 6 natural. I've seen people put out 5 jokers and a flower. Really doesn't matter as long as you've reached that 6. Now, chow is a very specifically Chinese Mahjong word. We have rarely seen them on the card. We've seen them more in the past couple of years, but for many years that we've played, there haven't been chows on the card. And it is one of the main melds, which I'll get to as the next term, it is one of the main exposures or combinations that is used in Chinese Mahjong, but now the American Mahjong League's using it. I think it's great. It's a lot like if you were playing gin rummy, what we call a run of like 5, 6, 7, or 2, 3, 4, all in the same suit. The exact same concept. So a chow is 3 numbers in a row consecutively in the same suit. But remember, they are each a single tile. You can't expose a chow because it's really 3 singles. I'll touch on that again later in the lecture. But then the final word I use that confuses a lot of people is the word meld. And meld is any component of a hand. It could be a pair. It could be 4 singles in a chunk like 2026 or news. Those are all different melds. And some hands are only 3 melds. Some hands are 5 or 6 melds. We have singles and pairs. You'll see up to 7 melds of, 7 pairs is 7 melds. So there's all sorts of different combinations of melds that'll get you up to your hand. So it's important to understand what the components of the hand are by recognizing what each individual meld really is. Okay, so again, I'm going to go back to talking about the single tile melds. We always have the year, so we're used to seeing that the year is all singles and that you can't call for it until your final tile. Likewise, there's several hands this year with 2, 4, 6, 8. That's a meld. 2, 4, 6 is a meld on certain hands. The specific chows that I was talking about are known as a 3-tile combination. But there is actually something on this year's card, a 4-tile combination, 4 numbers in a row in the same suit. And there is a Chinese word for it, but I'm not here to teach you Chinese. I'm here to teach you Mahjong. So rather than teach you the Chinese word for 4 tiles in a row, we're just going to call it a super chow. And the super chow appears in the Winds and Dragons section. The W2, let's see if we've all learned what I was talking about with the abbreviations. W2 means Winds and Dragons section, second hand down. In W2, we have 4 consecutive numbers in any suit. It doesn't have to match the Kong of dragons. It could match either of the suits of the Pungs of dragons. That's where in the parentheses where it says any dragons and any combination, any like numbered tiles. Does not matter what suit it's in, but the super chow must be 4 consecutive numbers. And you cannot expose it. You can only call for the final tile if you need to, or otherwise just make it while you're playing the hand. There's also a super secret chow. If you look down to W6, the one that's the 1 north, 2 east, 3 west, 4 south, it's those specific tiles. It must be the 1, 2, 3, and 4 in whatever suit you want, but it has to be 1, 2, 3, 4, all in the same suit. Can't be 5 through 8. It can't be 3 through 6. It has to be 1 through 4 because the whole point is the 1 corresponds to north because there's only a single north exposed or used in the hand. It's 2 of the easts, 3 of the wests, 4 of the souths, and that's why it's 1, 2, 3, 4 must be those numbers. So I call that my super secret chow because you don't really think of it as a super chow, but it is. So just to keep in mind. And of course, as I was saying, we know that the year news is another meld of singles tiles, NEWS. Again, you can't call for the W, you can't call for that west tile, except for the final. If you get what I'm saying. I'm banging it, I'm reiterating it so many times because I want to make sure that the newbies get that a meld is an important component, but you can't expose it per se in the middle of the game. You must wait for the final tile in order to expose the 2026, the news, whatever it is. You can't call for an exposure for those. Okay. So what's new in 2026? As I said in the beginning, I want you to understand every section and every hand. There are some combinations that aren't just in the neighborhood that you would expect. I call those 9 sections neighborhoods because my whole philosophy is you kind of pick a neighborhood before you pick the specific address. Like if you're collecting 3, 6s, and 9s, You're sort of going for that neighborhood, or if you've got a lot of even tiles, you're going for that neighborhood, but you haven't chosen your specific hand yet. So the wind tiles obviously appear in the Winds and Dragons section, but they also pop up in the year section, which they often do, and in singles and pairs, which they often do. But surprisingly, there's also winds in evens, odds, and 3, 6, 9. That doesn't happen every year. Last year, they did appear in the odds section, and that was kind of neat. But this year, they've even put them in evens and 3, 6, 9s. So keep in mind while you're collecting tiles, if you're like, I've got a lot of 3, 6, 9s, but some wins, maybe I could put that hand together. So remember where you might also be able to use the wins. Likewise, dragons are all over the place this year. They're in every single section. Like number Kongs are in a lot of different sections of the card, except they're not in the year section and they're not in the singles and pairs. Obviously, why would you have a Kong in singles and pairs? But in the quint section, it's actually 2 quints of like numbers and 1 Kong. So it's a Kong and 2 quints. Think of it this way. You've got like numbers in 3 suits, and well, look in the LN section. Oh, I would need 6 flowers for one version. I'd need each of the dragons for another one. I'd need a pair of dragons for the third one, and a pair of flowers. I've got no flowers. I've got no dragons. I'm not going to be able to make any of those, but I do have jokers. Well then, since you're not going to have singles or pairs using your jokers, you can use your jokers to complete that quint hand with like numbers. So it's nice to know that you've got a lot of options out there. Even though you're playing a like numbers hand, it's in the quint section. So you get what I'm saying. Just be open to all the different possibilities on the card. Don't be fixated on, well, I must play this section because I have this kind of tile. And then finally, of course, we know 2026 appears in singles and pairs. It always does. It's always the biggest hand of the year. Personally, I only make it about once a year, but it always turns up at some point. You get 3 soaps pretty early on, and you're like, I'll go for it. So obviously it appears there, and it always appears in the year section, but it's also there in one of the Winds and Dragons hands. It's the final one, the concealed one. And in previous years, we have seen this hand. Sometimes it's in this section. Sometimes it's actually in the year section. It really depends. But it's a familiar hand for those of you that have been playing for 5 or 6 years. Okay. Now I want to talk about illegal exposures, which are really important because not only do you not want to make that mistake, but if you see someone else making that mistake and they put out something that isn't part of a regular exposed hand, you could call their hand dead. We could talk, if you want in the Q&A, we can talk about why you wouldn't want to call their hand dead. That's certainly an option. But you yourself do your best not to expose illegal things so that your hand is not called dead. So, never expose the following using this year's card. Never expose singles. Never expose pairs. Never expose melds of single tiles, as I talked about. Don't expose a Kong of flowers. It doesn't exist on this year's card. 4 of a kind is a Kong. There's no 4 of a kind of flowers. There are 6, remember. The sextet this year is flowers. There are no other sextets. Likewise, there's only 1 kind of quint this year, just numbers. So don't expose any other kind of quint. And then the other thing that seems to be catching a lot of people is 2 pungs of the same number. They see it on their card and they're like, oh, I've got 3 8s. I'll put them out. Oh, I'm going to put out another 3 8s. And then somebody will call their hand dead. They're like, why? Well, because that is a concealed hand. There are 4 hands on this year's card that use 2 pungs of like numbers. They are the only hands that use 2 pungs of like numbers, and they are all concealed hands. You can double check. There's E8, CR8, O8A, and O8B. And those are the only hands that use 2 pungs of the same number. What you might do if you find yourself exposing 1 pung and you thought you were doing one of those hands, and you go, oh, rats, that's a concealed hand. I didn't mean to do that. You're just going to have to switch your hand to something else that uses that pung. Again, this is why we need to understand the card. We really need to know what is something that we can do and something that is not doable this year, not viable. Okay, I'm going to talk a little more extensively about this 6-flower issue because some people are making the mistake and thinking they can switch between the two. A sextet of flowers, which appears twice on the card, is very different from 2 pungs of flowers. Also involves 6 flowers, but totally different. And there are 2 hands that use those, the 2 pungs of flowers. These 2 exposures are not interchangeable. For a sextet, you need a combination of 5 flowers and or jokers in order to call for that 6th flower. You may not do it for less than the 6. You can't say 4 and put out the 5th and then say, well, I'll get the last one later. And you certainly can't put out 3 and then later on use the other 3 and say, well, this is a sextet now. That's not how it's done. They all have to come out together in order to play either of those 2 hands, the like numbers hand or that consecutive runs hand. Both of those involve 2 kongs. So it's 6 flowers and 2 kongs. That's how we get to 14, 4 plus 4 plus 6. Now the 2 pungs, if you put those out, well, you put out the first one, you could still switch your hand to so many different things because there are 12 different hands on this card that use at least 1 pung of flowers. So that's a nice thing to know, is that you have a lot of options even if you've only put out the 1 pung. But it's a good thing if you are going for either of those 2 hands. Most people figure, oh, she's got her pung, she's not going to want a second one, so they'll throw another flower. And hopefully you're ready to call that pung too, because it's just, flowers are very valuable this year. I mean, if somebody's grabbing 6, it's really hard to get anymore. So when flowers are thrown, be ready to call for them if you can. Don't hesitate is, I guess, what my point is. I think somebody was going to ask me later on about whether it's a good idea to call early. I will talk during Q&A about why I call early, especially this year. So anyway, the point that do not confuse the concept of a sextet and 2 pungs. It's very important. You can't switch between them. You either go for all 6 or you go 3 and 3. And the hands they go with are very, very different. So you are tied down. Once you expose the 6, that's it. And if you thought you were going for the one with the 6, but you only put out 3, now you're going to have to change your hand. So just keep that in mind. We can talk about it more. As I said, if somebody has a question later, we can talk about it more. And as I said, don't even bother looking. There are no quints of dragons, winds, or flowers on this year's card. There are no singles, and there are no kongs of flowers. We see singles of a lot of different other tiles, but there are no single flowers, and there are no kongs of flowers. So what is on the card? Well, we talked about how there are melds that involve 4 singles or sometimes 3 singles. There are single dragons on this card. If you want to double check with me, look on E6, and the like number is the second one, and then the singles and pairs the first hand. And then obviously we see single soaps in 2026. We don't put it out by itself, obviously, but we need a single soap in order to make most of the 2026 hands. I actually really enjoy the one where you could, in theory, use jokers for all 3 of the soaps that you need for Y1. Okay, so that's one thing. There are pairs, pungs, and kongs of winds, dragons, numbers. Again, all over the card, we know that. Numbers only appear as quints. And this is something that I have, quints only appear as numbers. This is something that one of my students really picked up on. I don't know, everybody learns in a different way. Some people have better mnemonics for numbers. Some people like visual patterns. Some people like to hear stories. Everybody's got a different way of learning the card. She likes to think of the components and how they add up to 14. So a perfect example, think of a hand that's got 3 kongs in it. Think of like a consecutive run hand. It's a kong of 1 bams, a kong of 2 bams, a kong of 3 bams. That's 4, 4, 4, 12 tiles. The flowers are the filler. So if you have 12 tiles, you need the 2 more flowers to make 14. That's just how some people's minds work. A pung kong hand is usually 3-4-3-4. This year it's 3-3-4-4. Just the idea that 3 plus 4 plus 3 plus 4 is 14. If you're a numbers person, you might like thinking, well, the components have to add up to 14. So now I get to something fun, the Charleston tips. Okay. This year's card in particular, try not to pass sixes. Sixes are super valuable because they appear in 3 different sections. They are essential to the completion of 3 different kinds of hands. You need them for the year hands. You need them for the even hands. You need them for the 3-6-9 section. So sixes are much more valuable this year than usual. So keep that in mind. Do not pass dragons if you can help it, because a single dragon, as I just was saying, single dragons are so important this year. And if somebody hands them to you during the Charleston, that is such a gift. Definitely use them, run with them. You were thinking of like numbers and somebody gives you 2 out of your 3 dragons. Awesome. Likewise, flowers. Flowers give you a lot more flexibility. I really discourage, if you have options, try not to pass these 3 kinds of tiles. And on the other hand, if you do in fact keep them throughout the Charleston, although you didn't need them, you just knew that it was smart to hold on to them, throw them early. The reason you want to throw them early is because often people aren't ready to call them, especially the single dragon. They aren't going to be able to call that till one of their final tiles, or it would have to be their final tile. So for the very first discard, that is a pretty safe discard if it were to be her Mahjong tile. We'll talk again more about that a little bit later, but the idea that obviously you can't call for the single tile, so that's why I would throw it early. Another thing people often ask me about Charleston, I can't figure out what to play. I've got a little bit of this and that, and it's a bunch of junk. I say watch what everybody's passing around if they're passing more evens than odds. But certainly if you're seeing wins going around and nobody seems to be holding on to them, you grab them, because somebody could make a really nice hand out of them. Wins, if you pick them up during the Charleston and you hold on to them, you could do some really nice creative things with them. Remember, we still have the other 3 sections of the card where they can be used. You can use them in singles and pairs and wins, but you now can use them in the even section, in the odd section, in the 3-6-9 section. They're in the year section. So it's really good if you see them going around and you have no better idea, then by all means, hold on to the wins as they get passed around. And one thing I'll remind some of, you may never have put this together, but it's a really important thing to remember. It's a Mahjong convention. Just as we all know that North is usually paired with South and East is usually paired with West, the numbers are also part of that pairing. I call it the EO rule. And the perfect example this year is W3 and W4. And then you see it again in the evens and odd sections of the card. W3 is the one with the norths and souths. You take 2 like-numbered kongs in an odd number, and then you need a pung of north and a pung of south. And the reason that you can remember with EO is the odds, O, go with north, which has an O in it, and south, which has an O in it. And then likewise with W4. The even-numbered kongs go with pungs of east and west, so that there's the letter E in east and the letter E in west and E in even. So that's the EO rule. Some of you may have never thought of it that way before. Some of you probably picked it up right away, but it's a really useful thing. You're getting some wins during the Charleston. You're going for a like-numbered hand with sevens, and you're getting easts and norths and wests. And you think, oh, sevens, let me keep my north. I don't need my east and west, but I might want my north. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind while you're doing the Charleston. Charleston karma. This is another huge Bubbe concept. we all play with somebody who stops the Charleston for no reason, or maybe we don't play with her every week, but maybe we've come across her in our days. Sometimes somebody's playing and they can't make up their mind between two hands, and they're in the middle of the Charleston and they're thinking, well, I have some of this and some of that, and I'm not really sure what to do, so I'm going to stop the Charleston. And everybody else is like, I say if you're stopping a Charleston because you can't make up your mind, then you are very likely not going to win. Like I'd say 95% of the time, you are not going to win because you didn't have a strong enough hand in the first place to help you make up your mind. If you have 12 tiles towards a singles and pairs hand, by all means, you have my blessing. Stop the Charleston. But there are many ways to continue a Charleston, even if you're pretty good. Like you've got 8 or 9 tiles, still keep going because you still get a free look at 9 tiles in the second Charleston. It is cutting off your nose to spite your face to stop the Charleston after the first left. And that's why I call it Charleston karma. The person that stops the Charleston very, very rarely wins, especially when she's doing it for no good reason. I will say, legally, anyone can stop a Charleston. It's her choice. She doesn't have to explain it to anybody. But if you're playing with someone who does it repeatedly, like every time you play together, or twice or 3 times every time you play together, oh my goodness. Just ask her to keep track for a couple of weeks. Is she winning those hands that she's stopping? And maybe she'll come to realize that it's not doing her any favors to stop the Charleston. Okay, so I'm going to move on. I am going to date myself by talking about Linda Ronstadt. I realize this song is like 50 years old, and I don't even want to think of it that way, but it's true. I'm calling this the Linda Ronstadt card because I feel like it's so easy. And now there's probably a few of you that have heard of Buddy Holly, who originally wrote the song. But again, that's even older than Linda Ronstadt. So, sei gesund. Anyway, it's so easy to get a single dragon rather than a pair. It is so much easier to get a single. It is so easy to get a pung of flowers rather than a pair or a Kong. Pairs are so hard, and we should all be grateful that there's no Kongs this year with the flowers. It is super easy. You got one you got one joker, you got one flower. Somebody throws a flower, you're good. It is much easier this year. So the single dragon is easier. The pung of flowers is easier. There's a lot of hands that switch between being a 1-suited version and a 2-suited version. Like 2, 4, 6, 8. You could think you're going to do it all in cracks, but then suddenly you do much better on the upper hand, on the upper part of it with 6s and 8s in BAMs. So you switch from the 1-suited to the 2-suited version. Situations like that happen with a bunch of different hands, and I love it. I think it's great that you can switch in the middle of playing. It's super easy. I put an asterisk by 369 number 1 because that actually switches from a 2-suited to a 3-suited hand. And that's come in super handy for me too, where it's like, oh, I've got the 3s and 6s. It's clear that that's going to be in BAMs. But I've got more 6 cracks and 9 dots than I do of 6 crack. Neither suit is that strong for both, but I've got really good in the cracks for the 6s and really good in the dots for the 9s. Oh, there's a 3-suited version. This is great. This is what I'm saying. This is so easy. It's such an easier card than usual. Likewise, it's easy to switch the suits. You can switch the dragons for that like numbered hand. Doesn't matter which pair of dragons it is. It could be the one that matches the pair in the like numbers hand, or it could be either of the Kongs. It doesn't matter which suit, as long as it's a pair of dragons. So this is what I'm saying. It's easy. There are a lot of really flexible moments on this card, so I'm a big fan. So now this is a thing that Bubbe is very well known for, is for silly nicknames for certain hands. And these are my pets. I'm talking about my pet hands, but I wanted to share a picture of my pets too. The one on the left is Pearl. The one on the right is Teddy. And yes, Pearl is Teddy's mom. So these are my pet hands. I make up silly little nicknames for them. I make up little stories about them, and then maybe it'll help you to remember these hands. So the floating pair is something that I made up last year. The idea is last year it was in a consecutive runs. You had 5 different numbers on a number line, and within that number, it was all singles, but one of them was a pair. And the pair would then have to be matched in the other 2 suits by Kongs. But this year we're doing it not on a straight consecutive run number line, we're doing it in the odd section. So we have 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, all in a certain suit. We have it all in cracks, let's say. So we got 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 in cracks. One of the numbers, you can float the pair wherever you want within that grouping. So we're going to say sevens. We have a pair of sevens within that grouping of cracks. Everything else is a single crack, but the sevens, we have a pair. Now we have to match that in the other 2 suits, also have to be sevens, but they each have to be a Kong that matches the pair. So that's the sevens of dots and the sevens of bams that match that 1 through 9 with the pair of sevens and cracks. So I call that the floating pair, and this year it's in the odds. And then this one caught me off guard. I was giving a lecture and someone else pointed out, I don't know how I missed it, but 369 number 5 is also a floating pair hand. I didn't get it. This woman named Sonia pointed it out to me, and she was right. And so now I call it Sonia's hand. The idea is, again, you have to match the pair within the 369. So you have a natural 369, and one of those numbers will be paired. You'll have 369 in dots, and you pick up another 9 dots. So, okay, that's going to be your key number, the 9s. So 369 with an extra 9 dot, all in dots, and then you need to get Kongs of 9s in the other 2 suits. And then because 369 is a pretty small little grouping, that 3699, that's only 4 tiles. So you've got 2 Kongs and then that meld of 4 tiles. So you're going to need 2 more tiles, and that's where that pair of flowers comes in. So it's a little different than the other floating pair hands. This one also will need that pair of flowers. Okay, this is a really goofy one. I'm calling this one E6 is called the Monster Creature Double Feature. And the reason I'm calling that is because I'm looking at Kongs and dragons. And we have a Kong and a dragon, a Kong of any even number with a matching dragon in that suit. Twice over, we have 2 situations like that. So let's call it 6s. We've got a Kong of 6 bams with a single green dragon, and then a Kong of 6 cracks with a single red dragon. So that's like a double feature, the Kong against the dragon twice. And then in the 3rd suit, which I guess this time would be bams, we say 2, 4, 6, 8. The audience is so excited to have a double feature that they cheer 2, 4, 6, 8. So that's your monster creature double feature. Very goofy, but some people enjoy trying to remember a hand. They're like, I know there was a hand in there that had Kongs and dragons in 2, 4, 6, 8. Where did that go? So that's the hand. E6 is the monster creature double feature. And then there's the companion hand to that. E7, I'm calling the Fey Ray. That's where Beauty tames the beast. Fey, Colin has fallen in love with her, and she calls the shots. He will do anything for her. He says, bring me flowers. He brings her 2 different bouquets of flowers. So she's got a pung of flowers, a second pung of flowers, and she tells Kong, I want you to dress up for me. She says, I decide what you're going to wear. She picks the number, any even number. She picks the number, and she picks the suit that it's in. So she's saying, I want you to wear 2 dots, or I want you to wear 8 cracks. She decides. So there's a Kong of whatever color, in whatever even number, totally up to Faye. But then the audience loves Faye, and they're cheering for her too. They just have to cheer in a different color than the suit that Kong is wearing. So you get a 2, 4, 6, 8 in one suit, a Kong of any even number in a second suit, and then the 2 pungs of flowers for Faye because he's so in love with her. So that's how you remember the Fey Ray hand. Pretty goofy. Okay, this is another hand that I love. I call this the Choose Your Chow hand. Think of it as a sandwich. It's a sandwich hand where you've got two Kongs on either end of a little number line from 1 to 5, 2 to 6, 3 to 7, anywhere where there's a spacing in between of 3 tiles, because that's going to be your chow in the middle between the two Kong slices of bread. Now, the two Kongs have to be of the same number, but you get to choose the suit for the middle chow. The chow could be the same suit. You're certainly entitled to keep in the same suit, but you also have the two suited option where you can make that interim 3 numbers a different suit. And that is super helpful because let's say you said, okay, my Kongs are going to be 2 and 6 in BAMs. So you got 2 and 6 BAM, and you think you're going 3, 4, 5 in the middle, and somebody puts out a Kong of 4 BAMs. So there's no way you're going to be able to make the chow naturally. You can't. So you can switch to 3, 4, 5 in either of the other 2 suits. It's really extremely flexible. I really like this hand. I play this. This is one of my most common hands for sure. And as we've talked about with this 14 business, we got 2 Kongs, we've got a chow. That's only 11 tiles. So we're going to finish off our sandwich with a little side salad of 3 flowers to get us up to 14 tiles. Okay, so I love that hand. Choose your chow. This one is another stealthy hand. You don't see it right away because it's not flush left. It's the 2 suited version of one of the hands in consecutive runs. On the 5th line, CR5 has a 1 suited and a 2 suited version, and you probably don't notice the 2 suited version right away. But you guys are beautifully Jewish, so you know all about knitting. So you know that sometimes in Mahjong we have something called a knit hand. I really like them. I wish they had them more. This year they finally have this one, and maybe theoretically you could call there's another hand you might call a knit hand. The reason I call them knit hands is because they alternate suits. So the perfect way to look at this hand is you need 3 flowers, that's above and beyond, but you have pair in suit A, then the next number is a pair in suit B, then the Pung in suit A again, and then the Kong of Dragons that match suit B. So the dragons match that middle meld, the pair, the second pair in the sequence. So you really have to look twice and go, oh yeah, that's a knit hand. I can have it match the middle pair, not the first pair. It can only match the middle pair. But it's again another one where you can be flexible. Say you're collecting a whole bunch of dragons that don't match the consecutive runs that you're doing. It's a different suit, but then you think, well, if I can get that pair, I can make this work for me. So keep your eyes open. Remember what options you've got out there. There's a lot of interesting little hands on this card. You just got to keep your eyes open and remember what is out there and what your options could be. Now, this one, you are a very literate crowd. I have no doubt you understand what I mean by the white whale. It's a reference to Moby Dick. Captain Ahab is obsessed with Moby Dick. And so the white whale is a metaphor for something for which you are absolutely obsessed. And so, sorry about that. There's my white whale. And the reason I called this Get Me My Glasses is because I'm so sorry. The first time I looked at this hand, I thought it was a typo. I looked at it and I thought, wait, last year there were so many errors on the card. Maybe this is a mistake. And then I said, no. This is another floating pair thing. They've got 3, 6, 9. First you match the 3, second suit you match the 6, third suit you match the 9. And then, of course, you still need a pair of flowers to make it 14. So the idea is it's a floating pair with each suit representing one pair of the 3, 6, 9s. And I became obsessed with it. I was like, I've got to make this hand. I've now made it twice, which is great. But again, I've only made it online. So it'll be interesting to see when I play in person if I ever make it in person. But it just caught my imagination. I really love this hand. And one thing that I absolutely recommend if you're trying for this hand is to do your best during the Charleston to collect only 3, 6s, and 9s, get rid of everything else, or as much of everything else as you can. And if it falls through, say somebody puts out a natural Kong of 6s or 3s or 9s, in any suit, doesn't matter. A natural Kong is going to knock you out of making this hand. but you still have so many other options within the 369 section that I wouldn't worry about it. If you're like me and you have this little obsession, I would say definitely see what you can do during a Charleston and in the early part of the game. Maybe you can get something going with this particular hand or whatever other hand catches your imagination. So, this is my contact info. I write blogs. I write a lot of blogs during April. That's my most prolific time is when I'm analyzing the new card. I will go panel by panel, looking at every single card, every single hand on the card, and explaining backup hands that you might think about for each hand. And I talk about the various melds and what they mean, and just sort of try to draw parallels and help you. So a lot of analysis of the new card, a lot of analysis of how to switch your hand. And then during the rest of the year, if I see a interesting teaching lesson in a hand that I was playing, I will probably write about it anecdotally. So you'll see like I call them tales from the table. Likewise, I'm giving you my email address so that if you ever have a question, if you ever have something that's confusing to you, please feel free to email me. Email me if you liked my lecture. Email me if you want me to come and speak to your group. Any of those options are available to you. I check my email all the time. And the other thing we will talk about a little bit later, or you can tell me if you want me to start talking about sales, that if anybody wants to buy any of my books, they can email me too. So, because it's a lot cheaper than on Amazon.
That's very good to know. Thank you. And thank you for sharing. And maybe if you can put the email in the chat, that would be great
Oh,
also.
sure. Sure.
Um, and I would love to ask Carla, I know you have to duck out to put there, she just put it in. Everyone, that's Carla. If you, she just launched a Kveller newsletter also about Jewish Joy, so you should subscribe to that. But she also runs a Facebook group called the Mahjong Minion. Are you in that, Karen?
If I didn't join, I'm about to.
So
Please
everyone
do. We'd love to have everyone.
check it out.
Right, and of course, Bubbe has a Facebook page too. I mean, yes.
Amazing,
Yes.
amazing. So we have a number of questions. Thank you so much, Carla, and I look forward to reading your newsletter. So we have a number of questions in the chat. We can go through the chat, and there seems to be at least one hand raised. So however you want to do it, Karen.
I'm gonna have you call on people.
Okay. So let me just go since time-wise, who's posted, and then I guess we'll go to the people who. So
I'm
Al,
gonna just run for a second. I left for
okay. I'm gonna just pull from the chat.
I don't card in this room. I'm upstairs because of the cleaning ladies and I don't have a card. Okay, so humor me. Humor me, people. I'm sorry I don't have a card, but I will do my best to answer your questions anyway. I'm gonna see if I can call one up on my phone.
Okay, no
Okay.
worries. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Okay,
It's
so
the
we got
cleaning
two
lady's fault,
anonymous
not us.
questions, which I told you earlier. So very first question is, when should we lock into a hand?
Oh, obviously after 2 or 3 exposures, you are pretty much tied down. But until you've exposed, you really could keep switching as much as you. I'm not really sure what you mean by locked in.
That was Amy. If you're still here, Amy, and you want to ask a follow-up, feel free.
I'm a new player,
Yeah.
so my natural inclination is to lock in, like even in the Charleston, but I don't think I should be doing that.
Well, this is what I was talking about neighborhoods, where I was saying you've got a whole bunch of odd tiles. Start thinking about the 13579 section. I wouldn't narrow it down to one specific hand during the Charleston, just because something part of what I'm trying to teach you when I say luck favors the prepared mind is say you think you're going for something that only uses singles and pairs and you suddenly pick up 2 or 3 jokers, or you pick up things that you can exchange for other people's jokers. If you've already in your mind decided that you're going for X, you can't really, well, that I am wrong. The one time that you can do that is when you're doing singles and pairs because you haven't exposed anything. You could still switch up your hand because as far as anybody knows, you're playing a concealed hand. They have no idea what you're playing. So yes, my whole point is keep your mind open to what happens if you do start to get jokers, or if you do get those dragons and suddenly you can use the hand that uses the dragon option, or you see what I'm saying, that there are going to be other options. Maybe as you get better or more experienced, you'll feel more comfortable having at least one other backup hand. That's probably the best way to go for somebody who's just starting. Is to say, well, I know I'm doing 1-3-3-5. I wish I had the picture in front of me. You know what I mean, 1-3-3-5, right? Right. Thank you. It's too small. I can't see it. I'm gonna call up.
Okay, I tried.
I know. I have it on my phone. I'm gonna search for it under. Somebody texted a picture of something to me, so I can use that. Okay. So say you were playing. It looks really nice. You look like. It looks like it might be worth going for. Oh, this is perfect. These two go together. I mean O06 and O2. O2.1 and O6. I mean O2A and O6A. They're two different odd hands that use the lower end of the number line, right? One is 1-3-3-5, the other is 1-3-1-3-5. If you're collecting ones, threes, and fives, you see where things are falling. One is a little harder because it has a couple of pairs, so that makes it a little trickier. The other's a little harder because it involves that's the same hand. That's a little trickier because it involves three suits instead of two. So in general, Hong Kong hands, where it's only three of a kind and four of a kind, is the easier hand to play. So maybe if you're starting out and you're thinking, well, I'm going to try 1-3-1-3-5, the sixth hand down, but I may end up switching to the easier one, the 1-3-3-5. Either way, I'm going to be putting out that Kong of fives, right? And either way, I'm going to be putting out that Pung of ones and threes. So the big question becomes, if I can't get the ones and threes in that third suit, then I would just put out that Kong of threes in the suit of the fives. You see what I'm saying? They're basically the same hand. The only difference is, instead of doing a Kong of threes, you're putting out a pair of ones and a pair of threes in suit number 3. Do you see that, Amy? Are you getting what I'm saying? So that can be the backup hand to the other one.
Okay. Thank you.
That's the kind of thing I'm saying is, think about having a backup hand so that you're ready to switch. You don't have to think of every single hand on the card, but at least this way, you know that there's something else you could play. And Pungs and Kongs make great backup hands because you can always use jokers, you can always expose, and you can't be called dead. Your hand will not be called dead because you can always use jokers for it. Even if you had to use 4 jokers, you could still be conceivably playing any hand, any Pung Kong hand. Okay, so
we have a question from Alice.
Yes. She's the one with her hand up?
Yeah.
Yeah, I also typed it in the thing. On Winds and Dragons number 2, do the 1, 2, 3, 4 have to match the 4 dragons or no?
No, I was saying that look in the parentheses. It says any 4 consecutive numbers in any one suit. And when it says any 3 dragons, it means the dragons don't have to be in any specific order for which suit is which. So the Kong is there, but the Kong could be any of the 3 suits. It doesn't have to be the one that matches the consecutive numbers. Any means any. So any 4 consecutive numbers.
Does that help, Alice?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Debbie asked, she said she called a tile and exposed 4 tiles and realized she only needed 3. It was still my turn because I didn't throw any tiles yet. Was I dead?
No.
Good.
There's two things to look at. One is, since you hadn't thrown yet, you could say, oops, and take back the 1. I tell my students, it's not set in concrete until you discard it. An exposure can vary. You can say, oh, I meant to make that a quint. I meant to make it a pung. Whatever it is that you meant to make it, You can change it as much as you need to until you discard. Then your turn is over, and that exposure is now concrete. You can't change it. And
Thank
that's
you.
part of what I mean when I say two pungs is not a sextet. You can't change that pung of flowers into a sextet. Same idea. It's got to be what it is at the end of your turn. But even so, your hand wouldn't be dead. You would just have to change your hand to something that incorporated. If you did do the discard, now you're stuck with a Kong and you really meant to pung. Now you're just going to have to go for a hand that involves that Kong instead of the pung.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
We have two Joker related questions. I'm going to pool them. One is there a rule of thumb about how many Jokers you should have after the Charleston to consider doing a closed hand? And the second is, can you exchange more than one Joker in your turn?
Oh, those are good questions. I'll start with the second one. You can expose you can exchange for as many Jokers as there are out. I mean, God bless. If you can, that's awesome. The idea is, if somebody puts out, a flower in 3 or 4, whatever, as many Jokers as you can exchange for, you can take when it's your turn. You have to wait until you've either picked or called for an exposure and made that exposure. You can't exchange and put that new Joker as part of your exposure. It has to be within your rack, the things that you already had. You can't use any of the exchanging things to complete an exposure. If you know do you get what I'm saying? That the exchange of the Joker. Who asked the question? Does she get what I'm saying?
That was Flynn G.
Okay. Well, yes. So bottom line, yes, you can exchange more than one Joker in your turn. Absolutely. But the other question was, what was the first one again?
That was mine.
The next question was how many Jokers should you have after the Charleston to consider doing a closed hand?
I don't let that dictate anything. I will go for a quint when I don't have any Jokers. I will go because I'm crazy. I will go for a concealed hand if that's what the tiles are telling me to do. The nicest thing about going for a concealed hand is nobody knows. Nobody knows what you're doing. Are you talking specifically about singles and pairs and whether you should go for singles and pairs?
No,
Oh, so
I was thinking more like, well, a lot of the concealed hands, realistically, you need Jokers. It's hard. It's hard. I mean, it's unusual to have a Jokerless hand and a concealed hand.
well,
Look
you
at the
never know.
Look at the 2026 concealed hand. You've got
There isn't one in the
Oh,
2026 section.
right, it's not. They cheated us this year. They did that on the any like numbers too. The bottom one isn't concealed either.
Right.
Okay.
So, but let's go down to the one in the even section.
Okay.
So there's only 2 pungs in there. Those are the only 2 places you can use
Yeah.
a Joker.
Right.
The thing that you have to remember, and I'm a numbers nerd. I take all sorts of statistics when I play. I write down what I think I'm playing at the end of the Charleston versus what I end up playing, all sorts of things. And I've also calculated your probability of getting Jokers and flowers in your deal. On average, you should be getting 2/3 of a Joker and 2/3 of a flower in every deal, which is to say, sometimes you get 2, sometimes you get 0, sometimes you get 4. You might get 4 flowers and no Jokers, or there's all different combinations, but over time, the average is 2/3 of a Joker in a deal. So there will definitely be times when you get no flowers, no Jokers. It happens, but that's the point of averages. But remember, there's so many chances for you to exchange for a Joker. There's still going to be Jokers in the wall that you're going to pick. So just going by those tiles that you start with doesn't really dictate what you're going to have by the end of the game. You could start with 0 or 1 Joker and end up with like 4 or 5. You really don't know. So it's really hard to pick a hand based on Jokers when things can change so rapidly. I mean, I've played where I suddenly, because of what people exposed, I suddenly picked 2 or 3 in a row that I was able to exchange for jokers. Go figure.
We have a question from Maureen.
Still?
First, I want to really thank Karen for doing this. And I'm so happy to see two of my favorite people and favorite crafts merging together right now. My head's exploding with knitting and Mahjong. And one thing, Tanya, should I talk about it now? One thing I've suggested to Tanya is that we set up a monthly online Mahjong game. Ironically, I'm just coming back from Kansas City with 4 friends that got really close during COVID. I used to play with American Women's Club London in person, and then COVID happened and we were all over the world. And I would do a Zoom where we'd schmooze for a few minutes and we could share our knitting or something. And then, or maybe Karen would do a Mahjong Devar Torah, a little tip of the month. And then we go into breakout rooms of 4 people, have 2 devices, use the bigger device, computer or iPad, for realmahjong.com. And we would sign up ahead with our name, find our friends, play for an hour, make an announcement, come back, play with another group. And you would have the Zoom up on one device, Real Mahjong up on the other device. You're schmoozing, talking to friends while you're playing Mahjong, meeting new friends, and then switching it up and play as long as you want. And I did that during Zoom, during COVID, we were doing it weekly, bi-weekly, and I made some really close friends over it. And I think many of us are all over the country, have a lot in common. And if only Real Mahjong allowed you to use a verbal clue, we could knit and play. But, I just think Tanya's going to throw something out suggesting it. And because I did this for about a year, I have a whole sheet explaining how to do it with easy steps. If people are interested, maybe they can indicate it in the chat right now, and we'll go on with suggesting it. And Karen, I was lucky enough to meet Karen. Should I say, or you want to say, Karen, how we met?
Oh my goodness.
2015, March of 2015, March of 2015.
I think it was November, or it was in the fall. Maureen's JCC in Milwaukee. I had been trying to get Milwaukee and they just didn't respond. And then suddenly they reached out to me. And I guess Maureen had found my book on the internet, on Amazon, and she told them they had to invite me. And she threw the most lovely afternoon. We had, Bubbe did her spiel. Everybody got a copy of the book, and she had this beautiful lunch of Chinese food, kosher. And then we all played for the afternoon. My favorite thing, though, 2 of my favorite things. One was getting to know you, but the other was these 2 old Russian men showed up, and I was like, I'm sorry, I think the event sold out. I said, but you're interested in Mahjong? And they said, no, we're looking for Bubbe Fisher. I was like, oh my God.
That's so good.
Yeah. I had no idea. I sponsored the event, had read your book because I look for all things Mahjong on Amazon, and it's like Casablanca, a great friendship started.
Yeah.
I love it. We do have an online Maj question here, which we'll take.
Yes.
Someone wanted to know which hands are winning most and least, if you know that, on Real Maj. And according to their friends, no one's doing well in the 2026 category, despite 2026 containing 3 of 4 hands using PPKK, KP, KP patterns. The majority of our wins are in the CR grouping. We are curious to know if anyone else finds this to be the case.
I'm doing better on CR too. CR as well. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely consecutive runs, and that's not always that way, but this year, mostly consecutive runs, and Winds and Dragons I'm doing too, because there's some really nice ones this year. I love the ones with the East-West evens and the North-South odds. Those are really easy hands. The year is tricky. Maybe it's because the 6s are so hard. And as I was saying about the Dragons, Dragons are hot this year too, so it's harder to get those soaps. I'm not sure why the year hands are tougher this year, but I agree with you. I'm finding it similar.
Okay.
But I don't know what the official website stats are in terms of what overall nationwide what people are playing. Anecdotally, I agree with you. I personally am definitely CR. Like 40% of my wins, WINS, no D. 40% of my wins are in CR, maybe more than that.
Wild. Okay, that's really good to know. There's another question about um, I've been playing casually for about a year, and recently I played with a group of lifelong players. They advised me not to call early, exposing two jokers to complete a Kong. Do you have advice for less experienced players regarding the timing of exposing jokers for a Pong or Kong?
It's a good point that putting out two jokers is tough. But as I was saying earlier in the lecture, there are some tiles this year that are so valuable. Like those dragons. If somebody throws a dragon, that may be the only time you see it. Other people are using them. So if someone throws a dragon, you might need to call it very early on if you've got the jokers to do so. Only because if that's the only way to complete your hand, you got to do what you got to do. The one thing I remind everybody of is that you have as good a chance of picking a tile to redeem a joker as anyone else. So just because you put out a joker doesn't mean it's gone forever. You still might pick and redeem your own joker. So I always tell people take that chance, especially if it's essential to your hand. But yeah, there are times early on putting out two jokers. If it weren't a dragon, I wouldn't take the risk necessarily. I would do it for a dragon. I might not do it for like 7 dot or something. There's just some tiles that are just, if you don't do it now, you're never going to see it. Does that make
Okay.
any sense?
It does. Any last words of wisdom from Bubbe Fisher before we wrap?
I am going to do my sales pitch now and say, if you, I always tell people you should be winning about 20% of the games that you play. You should be evenly matched with the people you're playing with. So there's going to be wall games, but you'd be evenly matched about 20% of the time. You should win. If you find yourself not winning your fair share of 20%, you would probably benefit from my book. And if you find yourself winning about 75% of the time, use your winnings to buy your friends my book. So you've got my email address if you're interested in the books, or just if you have a question. I'm always happy to answer.
You guys have the Bubbe, but there was the Butterball Turkey hotline. Now there's the Bubbe Fisher hotline. You heard it
Right, I don't
here.
give out my phone number. I do give out my email, but I don't
Email
give out
is
my
pretty great. It's pretty
yeah.
great. So thank you so much for taking the time. I have learned so much, and I'm
Good.
very excited. And I now know what I want for Mother's Day. My kids keep asking me, and I want my family to all play, and I want everyone to learn to play. And we play a lot of cards, so I feel like like I have a little card fatigue. So I think this is the next thing for everyone to play together. So
Beautiful.
thank you. And thank you to everyone who's come and been part of this today. I will do a follow-up post, as I said, on the Beautifully Jewish Substack. Please subscribe so that you get this and all other updates, including updates about the playing that Maureen will facilitate for us. So this is the best. This has like brightened up my day, my week. I'm looking forward to new fun with my kids, and just because I have to do it, I have to share my jokers. Can you see it?
Mazel.
So I wish you all lots of mazel in your games.